Thanks for showing us all this stuff. Can you go into like a synth or a bass sound that you've done with Serum and show us like from really quickly from Serum, but also like the compression, the EQ, like what is going through your mind, the decision-making process when you say, I want another EQ or I want another compression, I want the attack at this or the release at this, like that change.
Like how does that come about?
Yeah, like how do
those things?
Yeah, can you like walk us through like one of them?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, I think a lot of it is just hearing it. Like I'm like, oh, well, this sound could use that. And after I do that, I'm like, oh, well, this sound could use one of those. And then it's like, well, that sounds great, but what else can we do to make this sound cool? And then you throw one of those on. And I say those because I don't really know what I threw on. But I'm trying to, oh, yikes. And it's probably going to solo something else too. I'll try to go through the actual, how it was created, if I could ever find it. This project is a giant mess. Okay, synth group. Is there anything in there? Yeah, okay, so oh, you know what? No, that's not going to work because I won't be able to look at it. So this is just a really high and wide synth, I think. Oh, my lord. Oh, okay, not that. Why is none of this playing? I apologize, guys. This is ludicrous. I don't know why this is not working. Yeah, like even without the group, we're getting audio, but it's not shoving through. I'm the idiot. Oh no. So like this is just it's just for whatever reason 15 years and I don't know why. There's no filter on it for some reason. There's a little bit of hyperdimension or hyper and dimension. There's actually a lot of hyper and dimension. And then I threw the multiband on because for whatever, I, again, don't understand it, but it gives it a lot of high end and a lot of punch, so it just kind of sounded better with it, and I was like, yeah, that sounds great. Whenever my computer stops hating me, I can show you another one. I believe this is probably the exact same thing, down an octave. I don't think these ones matter. The bass one is kind of cool. And it's the exact same bass as the first one that I made, but this one has a lot of the filters up. And then the same type of compressor, just kind of changed the threshold and the ratio to give it a little bit more punch and boosted the lows and a bit of the overtones of where I thought it sounded good.
Cool.
Just to kind of get that gritty sound. Like, last thing to just close that off for you, a lot of the times I'll make like a high-end version of a synth to get all the highs out and have it fit. Then there would be like a mid-section that are kind of like either squares or sines. Shout out Jaren. The squares are great and kind of give it, like the sines are really strong, but the squares give it this like punch and grunge that you can't get out of sines, at least unless you distort them. Then there's the low end, I'm going to call it a Reese, even though it might not be a Reese. You guys can correct me in the Q&A or whatever. And that gives it, I cut out all the low from that, so it gives it a lot of grit through the low end, and then I'll throw a sub underneath that. So it's kind of like a 4-part sandwich, if that makes sense, and or answers your question.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you.
Perfect.
Someone just
Can you go a bit into like how you organize your sample library and like what if like
what organization?
do you organize your sample library at all?
No, I mean
You just have like a bunch of packs to get like in one folder.
yeah, here you go. That's kind of Got a bunch of packs here. Again, this is not my production computer, and I think I realized a lot of the glitchiness. It was running fine earlier when we played it, because I know we tested it before, but it's because we're screen recording it, and my CPU can't handle doing both. But I kind of just, like, even when I'm searching for samples through here, like I'll search through here, or I'll go on Splice, and I'll find something that sounds cool, and eventually, as I keep finding more, I'll throw them into like one of these color-coded things that is either on the beta or on Ableton 10 itself. But I don't think this was part of your question at all, but I feel like I don't like doing it that much, because it's so easy for me to just be like, oh, here's your drum samples, you use these all the time, just keep using them, and you're gonna end up with, like, maybe not songs that sound similar, but vibes that sound similar through songs. And it's cool. Like, you can do that, and you can build your own sound out of it. But lately, I've just been trying to, like, go against that and start using different drums that maybe I haven't heard before. Maybe there is a sound that I'm looking for, and I'll either relay it to Splice, or I'll find one of my samples through, or not mine, but I'll find one of the samples that I have through any of these packs or any of the packs that I have at home, and then just hear a sound that I like, know what I have to do to it, whether it's like a drum bus for a kick or a little bit of distortion on a vocal, and then just do it myself. Does that answer the question a little bit?
Yeah, it does. I wasn't sure if you just had all your samples in like one folder, or if you like
went through kicks of each one.
Yeah, like you have like a
them
kick folder, and like, you know what I mean?
See, that would be really smart if I did that. So if you do that, you're like way ahead of me. But no, I just have everything as unorganized as possible.
You are definitely way more ahead of me, so.
Oh, no, that's not true.
What's up, man? What's the point of the compressor on the return track down there? Is that like a parallel processing kind of thing?
Be honest with you, I don't use it.
Oh.
I don't. Okay, this is the funniest thing for all you producers out there. I don't know anything about send and return tracks. I never use them. Someone's clapping. Maybe if that makes it more relatable. Like, I literally learned off of YouTube tutorials. I think that when somebody told me about doing it, and that's like my preset to when I make a new track, a new project, it always sits there. But somebody told me about parallel compression. I know you can send some stuff there, and whenever I send stuff there, it just makes it louder, and it really started bothering me. So I just said, screw that. I'm just gonna keep doing what I know how to do and don't do it. So maybe after. I've realized that I have to watch the Bohemian Rhapsody movie documentary tonight, but I think we'll now look at how to use send and return tracks, because I feel like those might be important.
Let me ask you something better then. You have your kicks and snares on a bus. Do you process those things together in any specific way, or?
This is good, because I think I might be able to open this one. That won't. Yeah, don't save. I don't think this project will freak out, because it's just audio samples, but I probably did something to the kick and snare group together after I threw it all together in a mix master track.
Like some sort of like compression or something to
Yeah, just like something simple, like nothing insane. Yeah, so they're in the same group. Oh, fantastic. I threw a fab filter that I have at home, but I don't have here, and it's just a little bit of compression. Quite an early attack. Again, couldn't tell you what it really does, but it sounds good. So I like it, and that's great. But yeah, I have like this drum bus on my UAD stuff as well that also works great. It's a API 2500. It sounds really cool, and it beefs everything up. So I throw that on the kick quite often. And apparently 2 fab filters that I don't really know how to use, but also sound cool. I apologize, guys. I don't really, maybe this is proof. I don't really know anything. I just kind of like dick around on this until it sounds cool. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds great. And then that's it. It's done.
Cool, man.
Did I answer the question a little bit?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now you know I know nothing.
I think a lot of us are in the same boat there.
Hey, thanks again for taking the time today. I had a quick question. So on Breed 2.0, when we were going through the main vocal, I remember us seeing that there wasn't a ton of like processing for that particular one, but you said later that you like to sometimes put like distortion on it or something. I was wondering if you like typically like what's kind of your like vocal processing chain in terms of like distortion or like de-essers and stuff like that?
So I made, again, probably don't have it here. Wait, yeah, look, I called it de-esser, woo, because it took forever to figure out how that was going to work. Throwing that on here, it's just just a regular Ableton. It cuts off a curve at 11.2 kilohertz. Pretty narrow curve. And every time that it goes, it just kind of cuts through. So like if I threw one of those onto a vocal, I'd generally put and like slam a compressor after it to keep it all the same volume, because the peaks that this thing cuts out, especially on 100% dry wet, is pretty extreme. And let's see if I have it here too. Yeah. This is like the vocal rack that I normally use. The LFO tool that's on it is kind of just for groove. Normally I end up turning it off after I start using it, but for whatever reason, I had made this one earlier for a separate track and it just sounded great, so I saved it as a preset and keep using it. But this just cuts off all the side EQ from the EQ8, so it's more of a mono sound. OTT just to where I like it, because another thing that I don't understand and don't really use all that often unless it's in here because it sounds cool. And then we really, really, really saturate the heck out of this thing. The Valhalla room gives it after the saturator, so it's not as gritty and as attacky of a sound. I just throw a little bit of Valhalla on it, partially also because I like the way that sounds. But I mean, if you weren't going to put the Valhalla room on or any type of reverb after that, you could just throw the dry wet on this down a little bit, or maybe not saturate it as much, or maybe just EQ it so it wasn't as screechy. But I didn't like how much of attack it had without the Valhalla, so I just let it breathe a little bit more. That's another thing too, and goes probably to show how much or how little I know, is I just kind of throw reverb on things sometime to cover up my mistakes, and then let LFO tool clean it up for me eventually. And I wish I was lying, but I'm not. The LFO tool, this just goes every half beat to kind of give, at least in the song that I was working on that didn't end up coming out, it gave it a little bit of pulse every half beat to keep it moving. But lately, I watched a Lewis the Child production tutorial, and they used Decapacitator. I don't remember who that's by. Soundtoys, yeah, thank you. Oh my God, you guys actually know way more than I do. Yeah, it's phenomenal. They have like a punish button, and that actually cranks everything out. But that's really, really cool. And then again, Valhalla room, was it Bob Ross where he paints and he just like, yeah, you cover up your mistakes? Or whatever. Either that or it was This Hour is 22 Minute skit. And if anybody knows whatever that show is, that's an old Canadian, like Rick Mercer type thing. So maybe you guys won't know it. But does this answer the question a little bit on the vocal?
Yeah, definitely.
Like
Thank you.
this is the same chain that I threw on the lead vocal for that. Sick.
So do you find yourself starting with the drop more often, or like an intro? Versus intro?
Intro.
And why is that?
I could write a minute-long intro to drop and not get a drop for years. Like I could write 30 of those before I came up with one drop. I think the drop is just kind of like, especially if it has to match something, that's also where I get frustrated. Like it's kind of counterproductive. Sometimes I'll start with a drop and I'll normally be able to come up with an intro really, really quick. But there's also other times, at least recently, where I'll write one or the other and then get really frustrated from barely trying, like, maybe 30 minutes on the next thing, or like whether it's the drop or the intro, and then like give up, close it, and try again in a bit because I want it to match so bad, but it doesn't match for some reason. And I think the songs that do come out or do get finished producing is when I do figure it out. Like there's tons of demos, even from when we did the EP stuff, that will probably never ever come out just because they never got produced out to that point. But probably the majority of the reason that they never got finished was because I couldn't figure out one or the other to match together, or just couldn't come up with an idea that would do it. Like you could force yourself to do it. And, like I know other producers, I'm sure some of you guys in the room can just like write out and bang out track after track after track pretty easy. But I'm the type of person that'll sit and not do anything for a week, or like maybe I'll like organize samples or come up with something. But then I'll come up with a track idea and I will work for 16 hours straight, sleep at 8 in the morning, wake up at noon, make food, go for another 8 hours, 10 hours, sleep whenever I feel like I'm too tired to keep working on it, and then go until it's done. But normally the intros are first, just because of like piano background and everything that I'd known through instruments before. It's so easy for me to just constantly layer as many things as possible on top of each other. And that's kind of what I try to do until it's like over like it's too much. Like it just sounds like I've got too much in one song. And then from there, it's like, all right, now that we've thrown as much different types of melodies or harmonies in there that we can possibly imagine with pads or vocal samples or anything on top, let's portion it out and make a song out of it. Instead of just like, oh, let's just keep adding to a 16-bar loop forever and then being like, yeah, screw it, I don't like it. But yeah, intros come way easier than drops.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna do 2 more questions.
Hey, Vincent, thanks for
Yeah.
doing this.
No, thank you for coming.
You mentioned earlier that you have an idea in your head, and then you want to get it on paper essentially as fast as possible. So, what's your process like once you have an idea? What's the fastest way for you to get it on there? Like, do you have like templates that you use, some presets that you just open up and you're ready to go? What's your process?
I think for the majority of it, it's just like either being able to create a sound or be able to create like the drop sound really, really quick. I think that's like the big thing, because I have a lot of trouble writing drums and then writing a melody to the drums, because I feel like the drums will restrict what type of rhythms I can use through a synth or like a bass line or something like that. So a lot of the time when I say like, let's get it down as quick as you can, I can't get it out. And it's just like, okay, well, whatever, screw that, moving on to the next thing, or like just give up on it. But for the times where it does come out, it's like opening up Serum and playing around with it for, half hour to an hour or however long it takes till you find something that's cool. And then from there, develop not just the sound, but develop like automations on it, get the rhythm right. Once the rhythm's right, you can get the drums in. I'm specifically talking right now for drops, but once you get the rhythm in from the drums and you have like a little bit of a bass point to work from, then you can expand on everything else. You can go through like, or at least I would go through like percussion, through like, like a simple ride every beat, or hi-hats to give it a little bit more of a groove. Or maybe the automation on the synth isn't, like it doesn't open enough, or you want to give it a little bit more movement through that, or through like a reverb to give it phrasing. Like there's a lot of other stuff that I try to do to get the sound moving if I start doing it quick, because once I start listening to stuff on loop, I just get bored with it and give up. It's just kind of how I work.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Awesome.
I hope that answered the question.
Yeah. Always me answer the questions.
Hi.
Yeah.
So I noticed in the earlier projects when you're creating sections, you were bouncing out audio with reverb and compression on it, like audio that was already created, and you splice it, you'd reverse it and put fades in order to chop and do different things. And I know it creates, I know when you bounce it out, it creates very strange, like you can't go back on certain types of processing. Do you ever feel that interferes with your mixing process, or is it like more important to get your idea out in any way you can and then worry about mixing later?
I think that's the main point, because like the reason that the production project for Breathe 2 had 140 whatever tracks is just what'll happen is like I'll create all the synths, and then eventually like I'll put all the effects on it, I'll record it, come out with the one audio sample or one sound, and then do a whole bunch of stuff to that. But let's say it didn't sound that great and there was a way to do it differently. I always try to leave in the production project the actual VSTs or the templates that created those sounds. So if it doesn't work and it sounds weird and I need to go back to it, I have something to revert to. Although it does kind of screw up the project itself the way that we all heard for a grueling 20 minutes, and I apologize again for that. The ideas and the presets are still there, or like whatever I've created is still there to be able to go back and redo it if I need to. Like there's a demo that I've given out to people that I haven't like mixed mastered yet, and there's a lot of different things that are wrong with it, and I need to go back and change it. But I did exactly what I did for the other project and recorded it in the audio and then spliced it around. So now I'm gonna have to go back, redo the same type of modulations through recording and do it a second time over, which is kind of a pain in the butt, but I know that even though it's meticulous, I really want it to sound as good as it can, so I'll go back and do it. But yeah, I mean, like to actually get back to the question and stop going on a tangent, I would definitely go for getting the sound right first and worrying about mixing it into the project later, solely because I work off of inspiration. And if it doesn't sound great, and it's bothering me, then I'm gonna like go back and worry about that before I even try anything else. And most times that like limits how far or how long I can keep working, because I'll just keep wasting time on something else and not get what I need done to keep my brain flowing.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Yeah.